Hello and welcome back to another video where I rant about prisons. Thank you. Today is going to be kind of different because a lot of it is coming from within me. I feel very passionately about this subject and I want to speak on some problematic beliefs that our society holds. I will have facts and statistics in the video just like the others, but do excuse me if it's a bit different because I really want to get a point across here. If you're watching this and you think that people in prison are awful, I just want to say I would really appreciate if you stuck around to hear me out. If you still hold that opinion at the end of the video, then you can comment and we can have a chat about it if you want. If you don't believe that people in prisons are all bad, that's good in my opinion, but you can stay anyway so that you can educate yourself further on the topic, or just if you like the sound of my voice, which I'm sure you probably don't. Firstly, I just want to say that I mean no disrespect towards anyone who may have been a victim of crime. I don't mean at all to take away from any experiences. I want to work towards a world in which there is less crime and therefore less victims and less people in prison. The narrative that's been fed to us is that criminals are bad. Therefore, it is easier for us to forget about them, especially if we're far removed from the lives of people that commit crime. But in my video today, I want to talk about some of the factors that lead people to committing crime, so that I can show you that these people are just human beings. Often ones that have led less fortunate lives than a lot of us. I want people to see that humans don't come into this world driven to commit crime. Some of us come into a world that accepts us, nurtures us and uplifts us, and others enter a world where they are neglected, abused and their needs are not met. This is not an excuse to behave in a way that is detrimental to others, but it is worth noting so that we can think more about productive systems to help those people to prevent crime from happening. To begin with, I would like to go through some characteristics of people in prison in order to portray what may lead a person to that point. 24% of the UK's prison population were taken into care as a child. Now, the fact that 24% of inmates are in care as a child suggests a lack of stable environment when growing up can severely affect the route a person goes down. How can we fix this? By providing more support to parents that are struggling. This can be through better child benefits and financial help, to free care support, and just removing stigma around the fact that people might need help. Also, better training within care homes to provide a loving and nurturing environment. Also, I know that abortions are legal in the UK, but there's definitely a move in America and Poland towards preventing women from getting abortions. I know it's not exactly a huge issue in England, but it definitely seems that the world is moving backwards in some strange way. I just want to say in a roundabout way that preventing women from having access to this healthcare is something that will definitely put up the amount of children that are put into care every year. If you try and prevent women from having access to that healthcare, then people will be having babies that they don't have the money to support, or maybe they're not in the right mental state. They just don't want a child. So some people, I know a lot of people, obviously when the child comes then they might change their mind, but sometimes it's just impossible to support it if we don't have good enough child benefits, as we can see, because so many people need help to feed their children, especially in a time like this with such uncertainty and people losing their jobs. If you force women that don't want children to have children, the rate of kids in care will go up. And it's not a fault of the women, it's a fault of the people that are preventing access to the care that we need. So if we can make access to abortions, and not even just abortion, care before that, like appropriate sex education and useful, like actual informative sex education for women, and contraceptives. So if there isn't a taboo about women using contraceptives, and if it's easily accessible and affordable, then you're going to prevent more children going into care. The fact that so many people that go to prison are in care is tied into the statistic that 41% witnessed violence at home as a child. I think one aspect of this is if you are raised in a volatile and violent environment, you may be more likely to see that as an example of how you should live your life. Outside of this, not having a positive environment might make you lose focus in school or be absent. 59% were regularly absent from school, which is typically going to result in poor academic grades and potentially less social skills. 42% were expelled or excluded from school. A lot of this will be down to poor behaviour, which, as I've suggested, could be due to tumultuous home environments. The reality is that school is actually incredibly important to set you up for later life, and if you don't get qualifications you can use to get into jobs, you're more likely to commit crime as a means of making money. This statistic increases over double when it comes to young offender programs. 90% of young offenders have been excluded from school, yet a quarter of these people don't have access to an education whilst in custody. 47% have no qualifications, which links to the point I just made about how you're more likely to commit crime to make money if you can't work. Alternatively, typically the worst paid jobs are the ones that require no qualifications. So if you're not being paid well, you're also more likely to commit crime to make money. Our minimum wage is not a living wage, which means that people are expected to live off of an amount of money that cannot cover the costs of life. We can prevent crime by increasing pay. This is just something that our government has to acknowledge and make an actual law so that it's not just down to the good companies that choose to pay their staff well. If we put our minimum wage up, then companies are forced to pay their staff enough money so that they can actually get by legally. 25% of the UK's prison population are black, Asian, or from minority ethnic groups. 25% is a quarter of the people that are in prison. And in the UK's general population, there's only 14% of people that are black, Asian, or from minority ethnic groups. So you can see that they are hugely overrepresented in our prison systems. This is a huge problem. Our justice system is biased against people of colour. Children need to be educated in school about racism. People's workplaces need to educate them on racism. People need to stop reading The Sun and the Daily Mail. And systems before prison need to stop discriminating against people for the colour of their skin. And I know that this is all something that is much easier said than done for me to sit here and say, we need to get rid of racism. But there is physical things that people can do to remove those factors and to stop pushing people of colour down. And I think, like a lot of things, the first thing that you can do to start making change later on is just to educate people. And if we have a school system that is blinded by our patriotism, or whatever you want to call it, or just maybe guilt or lack of acceptance, I don't know what it is, but if we have a school system that is intentionally not going to educate its children on the history of racism that is very prevalent in our country, you're going to raise ignorant children. And these ignorant children might grow up into ignorant adults that have the power to put people in prison or have the power to decide who they're employing. And if we allow people to grow up without trying to teach them to break the racist ideals that have been fed to them, we're going to continue to have a lot of racist people in our country. And I'm not saying that that is where the work starts and finishes. There's a lot more to be done. But I hope that you can see from that that our criminal justice system is in fact racist. So is the criminal justice systems in America and a lot of countries. It really is a shame. 64% have taken Class A drugs. I'm sure a lot of people have taken Class A drugs and not gone to prison, but there is a link between addiction problems and crime. 70% of people in prison have a drug problem. A person is so much more likely to act out of character whilst on drugs, so crime is more likely to take place. Preventing drug problems can be done through community work, offering more available therapy, and trying to remove stigma, especially for men, so that people don't feel that they have to bottle their feelings up and use drugs or alcohol to cope. Drugs are more common in deprived communities, which displays that if people are suffering to make ends meet or to have their needs met, they're more likely to use drugs or to sell them. 22% of people in prison drank alcohol every day leading up to entry to prison, which goes to show that it can be more than a casual use that leads someone to crime. If you create a society that is built to not provide enough for its people won't be happy. I don't believe we can blame humans for trying to cope when they've often lived a difficult life. Crime isn't something a person does out of evil, it's something a person does out of pain. I'm focusing on typical crime that gets people incarcerated because, don't get me wrong, people can be locked up for extremely stupid systems we have in place. Like what I mentioned before in a previous video about people being locked up if they couldn't pay their council tax. But that's a whole other story. And also the opposite end of that, where people are locked up for really heinous crimes. I'm just talking about basic, normal crimes that are committed, that are the most common for people to be sent to prison. If a child has to look after other children whilst they're growing up, they're 13 times more likely to go to prison. This displays how much stress can impact a person. If we had affordable childcare, part of this problem could be reduced. If we offered easily accessible mental health support for parents, another part of this problem could be reduced. If we pay people properly, they'll have more time to be able to look after their children sufficiently. If a family member has been to prison, you're 2.5 times more likely to follow suit. This shows us just another way that it is a vicious cycle that will not end until we approach the problem in a different way. If we can put these solutions into place, the cycle will at least slow down incredibly. I just think it's such a shame that people are being judged on the worst thing that they've ever done in life, and it's portrayed as if this is who they are as a person. The whole word criminal has been so stigmatised. It makes us think that these people are wrong, when in actual fact, often, if they had been provided with a loving and stable home, they wouldn't be in the position that they're in. The majority of prisoners have the literacy level of an 11-year-old. There is such a link here that's being ignored, and to think these statistics are known, yet education isn't widely available inside prison. People are being penalised for the colour of their skin, or the lack of money that they had when they were a child, or the fact that their parents couldn't support them, which isn't a fault of the parents either, in a lot of cases. But we need to stop punishing children for things that are out of their control. And even the idea that they deserve to be punished for these things needs to go. If we want to prevent further crime, we need to start paying attention to these facts and making sure that we can help within the community before people even go to prison. And then the people that are in prison, we need to provide them with an education and vocational training so that people can pursue further education or employment on release. My video about the prison crisis discusses how this isn't possible in our current overcrowded, underfunded and understaffed prisons we have at the moment. So watch that if you're interested in an expansion on that topic. We can also prevent further crime by changing mindsets. A lot of the time, people in prison may just not know what options they have available to them outside of crime. If we can show people that there is opportunity and hope for a better life, they're unlikely to recommit. If people leave prison with the same mindset as when they come in, they're likely to reoffend. But how can we expect people to change if we don't provide them with the facilities to do so? Another huge thing that can really help preventing further crime is assisting with transition. This is help for people when they leave prison. It's called through care or through the gate care. This can be help to stay away from drugs and crime. Most importantly, I feel, is housing on release. I said before, but when a person is released from prison, even if they're homeless, they're right at the bottom of the list for housing. The government has decided that these people don't matter, so how can we expect them to behave as if they do? At the moment, the UK has a 50% recidivism rate, meaning that half of the people that go to prison for short sentences will reoffend and go back. This statistic alone displays that the help that is needed is not being provided. Our current solutions to crime are ideas like longer sentences. This is something our Prime Minister promotes. Firstly, it's unethical to give someone a harsher sentence to try and put others off from committing the same crime. Life is not dispensable. Evidence suggests that making sentences longer doesn't work as a deterrent. People aren't less likely to commit crime if the sentence is longer. People are less likely to commit crime if you solve the problems that result in crime within the community. If you do nothing to create change, change will not occur. We can see from the statistics what is producing crime. Things like family role models in and out of prison, or children spending time in youth justice systems, or simply the fact that someone is withdrawn from school early or from a socio-economically deprived background. These factors are within reach. There are physical things that can be done to dissolve these problems. They just need to be acknowledged. And if after all of that you still believe that prisons should be used to punish, I suggest you watch my video about alternatives to prison. Or think about this. Norway's prisons are publicly acknowledged as nice. Their prison's architecture is built to feel like a normal living space in order to not detach the inmates from society. There's a grocery shop to purchase food, family can visit regularly. There's even a prison that's on an island where they all do farming work to promote ecological living. They get paid normal salaries and they work normal hours. There's barely any security, yet people don't try and escape. Rehabilitation is the main goal. Guards don't wear uniform and they're not armed. Prisoners can bring their own TVs and wear their own clothing. Most of their time is spent on courses to help make people more employable on release. These prisons have a 10 to 20% reconviction rate, compared to the UK that has a 50 to 70% reconviction rate. This is all we need to know to accept that punishment is not what is productive or useful in any way. If we want to prevent crime, we need to look at the countries that are doing successfully and we need to follow their example. Thank you for watching this. If you've made it this far, I can only hope that people watch these and learn something or feel a desire to change stupid systems that we have in place. I really appreciate anyone taking time to listen to me blabber, so thank you. Feel free to comment and let me know what you think about all this. Thank you. Bye. Why do I dress like I'm 90?